Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us. All right, so Cynthia, we've got two movies today that I'm actually excited by. We have Open 24 Hours, which
hmm
was a choice that I had that I handed to you. And then you handed to me No Fear. So which one would you like to tackle?
Um, let's start with No Fear. It was a bit unusual, a bit traditional in many elements, and if you rated it by traditional mechanisms, evaluated by traditional mechanisms, it wouldn't be an accurate assessment for why we like the movie, regardless.
So, Cynthia, one of the things that immediately I always look at rating systems. So, when you're flipping through the things, you look at something, you go, oh, if it's below a five, it's really hard for me to sit back and watch. I go, it's got to be above a five.
Yeah.
This movie was sitting at a 4.3 when you handed it to me. I have to tell you that the concept of this film is ingenious. And so for those of you out there who haven't seen it, it's basically it's a senses movie. So sight, hearing, and the ability to read something, and based around a demon. And I thought, what a phenomenal concept.
I agree. And when talking about the plot, when I first started watching a movie, my instant reaction was, "Gosh, I've seen this before. It's a demon. There's a spooky book, and they're casting spells." Or apparently, but as the movie progressed, the intensity level increased, and the plot became more complex. And I started to appreciate that the director and writer had really been trying to do something different. I don't know that he was fully successful, but it was not what I thought the movie initially was. It definitely surprised me.
So simple. This is actually where I went. The scoring sheet isn't working. Was this film that I watched, and the big reason for that was is the concept to me was a sound concept, and I would tell somebody to watch this film because of the concept, right?
Absolutely.
And and I would also say that we have a tendency to judge these films based on a lot of the times on budget, right? If you have a big budget, you can do these huge CGI things, blood and guts, big special effects. For new directors, new movies, maybe they've only got $30,000 that they pulled together from family and friends. And to me, what was fascinating about this film is I was intrigued enough that I continued to watch through it and was disappointed enough by the end of it to go, my goodness, if they had actually had a budget, this could have been a phenomenal horror film.
Which one of our categories is the villain, the fear factor, and the blood and guts, or the effects in the
Yes.
movie. I found it fascinating that, like you said, the because it's a low budget movie, you don't see much of the villain. The presence is felt throughout the movie.
Yes.
It's always there in many forms. So it was a compelling villain for me, even if in some ways a traditional villain. The approach was different, and there weren't a lot of effects. You don't really see the traditional demon. You don't really see some of the effects that you expect to see, but it was still effective in me. I felt fear as the movie went on. The intensity increased, and there were genuinely scary moments in it. How about for you?
Yeah, I would say I got turned off kind of early by the characters.
Yep.
And so that feeling of fear never came forward for me. I continuously was intrigued by the concept, and I was curious as to where this was going to go and how it was going to end. So that's what kept me going through the movie, and it's really why I said if I was going to have somebody watch this, I would tell them to watch it for the idea. Don't watch it for, like you said, don't watch it for the effects. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of blood and guts. I mean, there's a couple of scenes that are kind of, I don't want to call it ridiculous, but I call them the raspberry jelly scenes, right? Because that's all
hmm
they had. But to me, as I was watching this, I loved the idea and the concept. I just don't think they had the budget to pull it off.
Yeah, and other thing that occurred to me when you talk about characters as a characteristic of a movie, we've talked about them in the past of, we don't really want to do the traditional approach of acting and storyline. However, you can't ignore, I think, that is one small piece of the puzzle. If it's a compelling story, if this great direction and the actors can't pull it off, then that is something that contributes or not, to whether you enjoy the movie or not. So I think as we evolve our scoring system or evaluation system, yeah, let's talk about characters, but maybe we do incorporate as an element some of the traditional review characteristics, but it's not the whole thing. It's one piece of it.
So, Simple, the other thing that I would ask then is, do we want to maybe during our scoring, and again, I'm using the word scoring, and that's not what we're doing.
No, it's not the right
Uh,
term.
Is, has this director directed before? What kind of budget did they have to work with?
Yeah.
What was it filmed on? What's its medium that was used to do it? What elicited this point of fear? Because what I keep coming back to is that I think we're on a path that is a good path. Neither of us know yet, how do you take this and actually take a film and not use any of the things you use in the Oscars? We're not talking cinematography. We're not talking
Right.
great actors and actresses to verify what makes great horror.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, but I don't really know. I'm not convinced that whether the director or writer has previous experience or not matters, because maybe there are exceptions, but you look at like the Christopher Nolans of the world, whose very first movie out of the gate, Memento, was just a shocker in terms of its complexity and how well he pulled it off.
Yeah.
So if I was evaluating that, I would positively, and I did. I went and looked to see what are the other movies the director done. He really hadn't.
Yeah.
But maybe that isn't something to account for, because in this movie, it's clear the director is pretty novice and he
Yes.
couldn't quite pull it off. But there are moments where he was very close.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me. And that's why I'm not going to rate this either a Quiet Place or a Bird Box. It kind of sits right in the middle for me. It's that there's enough tension. There's enough for me of that what's going to happen that I would totally recommend this film to somebody to watch it.
Yeah, when I was doing the traditional scoring, or I shouldn't say traditional, our standard scoring, I labeled it closer to Bird Box because I based that on how much I enjoyed it, not on what our assessment criteria necessarily said, and that's a disconnect. If I say that something is more of a Bird Box, then the for lack of a better term, our scoring system should reflect that as well.
I agree with you. I agree. So the second movie we had was Open 24 Hours, Senthil. And actually, why I like these two films together is because they are both in a single location for the majority of the film, right? And not only a single location, kind of a confined location.
Yeah.
So Open 24 Hours takes place in a all-night convenience gas station. And the No Evil takes place in a residential home. That's a 2-story residential home. Now, this Open 24 Hours isn't 2 stories, it's a 1-story, but it's in a single location. You're kind of sitting in this single setting, which to me in horror films has always been one of those things that I love watching, because you have limited space to work within. You can't go running down the halls. You're not pulling an Evil Dead where the doors are opening, you have this demon chasing you, right? You are confined to locations. So you have to find ways to make these spooky. Before I get going on this, talk to me about Open 24 Hours. What did you think?
Again, this was a movie like No Fear, where it started off looking like a traditional slasher movie, and it isn't. It's much more complex, and it got complex to the point where I wasn't entirely certain for myself if I accurately could guess what was going on. I really didn't know what direction it was going to go, which was fascinating, which is awesome, because you take this very limited set, some effects, movie, and the director manages to surprise you in ways that I did not expect. I thought it was going to be another B-grade movie, and it wasn't.
No, so again, for those of you who decide to watch this film, you got to don't give up on it. Let it go, because I'm telling you, the ending for me was the payoff. The ending was a surprise to me. I was not expecting that to occur.
I thought that the ending was a little bit more traditional,
Yeah.
and I did, and I don't want to give anything away, but I, I felt like there were many different stories in the same movie, and I wouldn't say that they didn't belong. They all fit into what this character, the main character, she was experiencing, and you kind of have to figure out along with her exactly what it is that she's experiencing, and I'll just leave it at that. So really great job. Like I said, we don't traditionally talk about the normal factors of a movie, but this made me look up the director. So hey, he clearly pretty creative. He did a
Yeah.
pretty creative job.
And I thought the director did a great job of choosing a cast that continued the movie along. All the way down to the weird trucker who comes in at one point during it. I was impressed with the movie. Now, could it have been better? Yeah, I mean, there were elements of this film that I think, again, I look at these things and say, hey, I'm amazed at what they can pull off with the budgets that they have.
Yeah, I would give it a plus for the plot.
Yes,
Definitely great writing. The characters, there are traditional characters used in non-traditional ways.
yes,
So that was creative. The villain, it's complex. It's not a straightforward answer for me.
yeah,
Who and what the villain was, but I thought it was pretty effective.
yeah. There was some blood and guts. There
Plenty
was,
of it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was one scene where it was a little brutal, but
Yeah.
nothing was, over the top. I think it was a lot like, what was it last week we talked about, Wrong Turn?
Yeah. Did any of it scare you? Did you find any genuine scary moments in it?
I wouldn't call it scary. There were tense moments, right? There were tense moments. And especially as the film moved on and you're sitting there going, WTF?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I was left with some pretty, I'm not saying I looked over my shoulder kind of stuff, but I definitely had tension build up waiting to see what would happen with this.
Yeah, the tension is the right term. The intensity for me, I felt it along with the main character because I was trying to figure out what was going on along with the main character, who clearly also didn't really know till the very end exactly,
Yes.
what she was going through. And the pacing, I will say the same thing that you did, which is hang in there. When you first see it, it looks like a traditional slasher, but it's not.
Yeah. It's not. So for me, Senthil, I said this is a definite watch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind watching it again. I mean, I'm not going to add it to my video library, but it's a pretty damn good horror film.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of what we talked about earlier. The need to change how we assess and discuss movies.
Yes.
Because if you, even by our current um, uh, scoring sheet, this may not rate well, but it doesn't match our overall impression that,
right.
Yeah, go watch it at least once. It's worth it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going again. I think after now we've been doing this for a few episodes, we need to go through and refine.
Yeah.
We're not hitting the right things. I think we have the right ideas here, Senthil. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think our scoring sheet, we have some good ideas, but the way that it's laid out, we're not giving fair. We're not treating all movies fairly through this thing, and it's because of the way that the score sheet is laid out. It's just not. And again, I'm saying score sheet, but our categorizations of these horror films, it's just not working.
Yeah, let's call it categorization. Let's call it characteristics that we liked or disliked or worked or didn't work ultimately.
Yeah.
That's really what we're talking about here. It's not as straightforward, gee, the plot was terrible, or 3 out of 4 stars. What I've increasingly found, as we've discussed, is that I go to some of these streaming services and I look at the rating systems and they don't always reflect. I can see a 4 out of 5 star movie and think this is terrible. There's nothing about this I like. So that's what we're trying to avoid. We want to find a way to. We can't just say Bird Box and Quiet Place is a 3 or 4 star movie. That's meaningless.
Yeah, I agree with you. So if you were to rate Open 24 Hours, and again, I used rate, and that's not what we're doing, but are you more Quiet Place or a Bird Box in Open 24 Hours?
I would, I would say the plot is definitely more complex than either movie.
So, Senthil, I know this is the end of the show for these two, and again, I would ask all of our readers all of our readers, all of our watchers. If you are interested, you can go to offlawn.org to see our blog, and that will give you our score sheets and a very quick synopsis of our thoughts on the film. All right, Senthil, until next time.
Until next time.
See you later.